be able to call those folks and say, you know what, on day one, I'm going to place you with, family members that you already know.
Sixto calls this approach kinship.
Kinship care is when a child goes ahead and is able to live with an extended family member or an adult that they have already known. An adult who loves them. That adult can be a church member or close family friend. And what we now know is that research is showing that when children are placed with kin, they fare way better, from mental health to stability to graduating high school on time. And yet, only 35% of young people in the foster care system are actually placed with kin. But it doesn't have to be this way. In one thing, in partnership, right, we went in and we implemented some simple solutions, like, let's ask young people which adults in their family wish to live with. I wish I told you something better. That is one solution. We went ahead and required social workers to get extra approvals if they're going to place you outside of kin. The result? The initial placement with young people in the foster care system in a situation where they were living with kin rose from 3% to over 40% in just 2 years. In another state, we looked at a county, they were able to figure out how to place over 80% of those children with kin. So the idea that young people don't have adults in their life who can step up is not true. Every single year, hundreds of thousands of children are entering the foster care system and they're not being placed with family. The system spends over $30 billion on less than 1 million families a year. That is more than enough to make sure we find family, we support them, and that every child is living in a loving family situation. Right now, there's a big systems change opportunity. A federal decision that would make it super easy to have people who are related to a child step up and say, I'm willing to do this and get that support. If approved, we would see $3 billion shift from traditional foster care to kinship care. So when we work on these crazy ideas like let's make kinship care the norm, it is actually possible.
In your talk, you say that you're working on policy to make it easier for relatives to step up, to be foster parents. What do you mean by that? What makes it easier?
We're going to do simple things like help the state just ask the young person, who are the adults that you met? Then have a streamlined process that quickly gets that child placed in. Do the background check quickly. Turn around and do the home study quickly. But maybe we don't have to, on day one, start the 10 hours of traditional foster parenting classes. Maybe the child can be placed there and we do the classes while the child's already living with you. So we're going to streamline that process. And then make sure that all the barriers that are coming up, we continue to tell Congress, the White House, and the federal agencies about what are the challenges.
For now, those challenges mostly remain in place. Marquand Teets is a good example of just how hard it is to place kids with family, even when there are loved ones who want to step in.
We go to the phone office and we see our dead grandmother.
I get points doing that.
When they were tracked down,
I gotta get rid of all these coins. I don't need to have all that.
She sees us, she just bursts into tears
In there.
Burst crying. She said, I have been looking for you. I've been looking for you.
but his great-grandmother wasn't a government-approved
They're not worth hardly anything
so she
anyways.
couldn't get government assistance to raise them, and ended up back in Camp Newport. Until a couple years later, when they finally went to live with a great aunt who qualified.
We didn't even know we had great auntie. We just found out when we moved in with her. And then she starts showing us pictures of our mom, showing us pictures of all of the family that we've never met. And we started having a family environment. The fact that I did get to live with my auntie for all those years, it helped me prepare them. While I was there, I got to build a savings account. So I built my savings account. While I was there, I got to buy my first vehicle. I bought a truck. While I was there,
That's nice.
I worked So
I hope I can, my next life, I think to put money aside, that I can make money maybe, and I can put it aside for when I leave home. I left home with $100 or so. I mean, didn't really have that much money.
Now Marquand works at Think of Us with Sixto.
Probably had my recent paycheck, but
surprising discovery about
I
his
didn't have that much of a savings.
Just a couple of years ago, I was in New York City and I got a phone call from my sister that there was a family meeting happening. I didn't know them, they didn't know me. And when I was able to meet them, the biggest shocker for me was that I had these 4 uncles and aunts who were foster adopted parents. So here were people in my own family who were blood related to me, who had been approved by the state to not just foster, but to go through the full process of actually adopting a sibling set. And yet here I was for my entire life, going from foster home to foster home, or at one point being adopted by a very recent parent.
Did you have this conversation when you got to chat with your aunts and uncles who you hadn't known? Did you talk about this?
Honestly, no. I think for me, I was just so numb in that moment that the number one thing the thing that I did immediately was like pull out my phone, GPS to my last foster home, which was 58 miles away. And then I just try to manage the numbness that came from that moment, because when you spent your whole life with this constant narrative of there's no place for you, there's no family for you, we can't place you with anyone, and then all of a sudden that gets disrupted, it was like hard for me to believe, like, wow, I've been lied to my entire life. And that's where real grief came in, because I started to grieve what could have been.
Oh, that just feels shameful.
I think it's the biggest representation of how broken and flawed by design the system is. The reality is we need a system that does protect children, but if you're going to remove a child, how do you do your due diligence to make sure that children are being placed and family members and we're making sure people are getting the support that they need?
So this kinship care model, what do you have to do next to make it sort of the default when a child comes into the foster care system?
So number one,
Right lane.
what we have right now are regulations that would enable states to set up their own specific process for family members or people that are with a child. And as a part of that, they would be able to draw down federal dollars. This would be historic if these regulations passed, because what it would do, it would transfer $3 billion out of the traditional $11 billion from like traditional foster care to kinship care over a 5-year period. So it's a huge shift. So the first thing is to say, for states to raise their hand and say, number one, I want to go ahead and be a kinship care first system and draw down these dollars and make sure that my departments are structured to find families, to make sure that families get the same monthly check, the same health care for the child that any foster parent would get, right? And charge the federal government or leverage the federal government's money to be able to do that. Number two, people are going to have to innovate and think differently about how do you do that? Like, what is
Yeah, it's feeling cold outside.
So right now,
Dang.
we're working with a group of people.
Just leaving the
to do
heat
some
off
research
for a little
around
while and
how
it's
far
starting to
that
get cold
background
in
check
here.
needs to go. What does that house inspection need to do?
You're skeptical. Is upending this whole way that the system
I don't know what
has
the
been in place
temperature
for
is out
decades.
there.
Do you get people saying like, hey,
Wish they'd tell us the weather.
I don't know if this is really possible.
So this is very ambitious. The timeline is extremely ambitious. And so I think the most critiques around what we want to accomplish is the idea that we can do this type of push in 5 to 7 years. However, people are starting to believe we can. 20 years ago, it would not have been a conversation to say grandma should take her grandchildren in, because a lot of people would say the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And the reality is that people do say that today, but not at the same rate. And that we see certain counties in the country that have been able to get over 80% of their children placed with a family member or someone with that child already knew. So we have evidence that now it's possible. I'll say this. I truly believe we're at this pivot point. And that if we push just a little bit harder in this very moment, that we can actually live in a new reality where when children have to come into the foster care system, that the first thing that is looked at is extended family, is people that they know. And if we are able to achieve that, we will literally be able to ensure that millions of children will come off of that school bus, go into their homes, look at family members, people that they know, and say, I am loved.